Welcome to the Vibrantly You podcast. We're your hosts, Megan Martineau.
And Caitlin Cipriano. In this podcast, we talk about fitness and nutrition on your motherhood journey. Whether you are trying to conceive, pregnant, postpartum, or beyond, you are welcome here.
Nothing is off limits, and our goal is to support you in this important season of life so that you can feel vibrantly you. As a reminder, this information is not medical advice. Please see the show notes for more details. Welcome back to the Vibrantly You podcast. Today, Caitlin and I are going to have a more casual conversation because today, the day that we are recording this podcast, is actually Caitlin's daughter's second birthday, and my daughter turns 2 next Wednesday. So I know we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but our daughters are very close in age. They're 6 days apart. And so Caitlin and I have been in this really cool position where we've both gone through pregnancy and postpartum together. And so today we'd want to just kind of reflect on being 2 years postpartum, what that looks like, how we feel, and kind of where we're going from here. So Caitlin, how do you feel that today's her second birthday? I can't believe it.
I think it's very bittersweet in ways. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm excited that it's her second birthday and that there's so much to look forward to, I think, that comes with two, two, alongside of all of the sass. But it's also there are certain parts that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she is actually two. Like, where did some of that time go? Um, and I know that we've talked about this on the podcast a little bit before, but the first, I would say, 15 months of postpartum for me with her was really, really difficult, and clouded in a lot of ways by struggle with mental health and postpartum mood disorder for me. So sometimes it's also just really emotional and kind of hard to think about, that time period and how different that looked for me with her versus that first, year and a half of how it looked like with Luca, with my son.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. And I know I haven't shared too much about this myself, like my mental health journey to postpartum, but with my son, for me, it was more postpartum anxiety that I really struggled with. And I do think that made it hard to enjoy, those
Mm-hmm.
first year, really. But this time around for me, it was more postpartum rage. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
that's not I think it is becoming more of an official diagnosis. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's being talked about more. And I think that
Yeah.
falls under the umbrella of postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was thinking about that as we were preparing to record this episode, that it's just so, yeah, I guess like bittersweet, kind of like you said, but just being kind of sad, that this phase is
Yeah.
coming to an end, the baby phase is coming to an end. But then when you do reflect back, being like, but it was really hard. Like I was really, we were in the trenches,
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, yes, I'll miss that cuteness, but I really appreciate just being in a more stable, for lack of a better word, stable place now, like mentally, where I'm like, oh, now I can actually like fully be present and like show up to like parent the way that I want to. And I feel like this is a pretty common experience for a lot of moms.
Yeah, I would agree too, which that I think is feel always feels encouraging for me to know that a lot of moms do have similar experiences, and the fact that again, the first 2 years are very challenging and they're, in the trenches, like you said, but that, yeah, I started feeling much more like myself and much more capacity to offer myself personally. And that really does allow me to be a better mom, be better at parenting and just, as a human in general.
Yeah, and I think capacity is such a good thing to bring up because now, for the most part, they sleep better, like they're in more of a routine. They're starting to gain a little more independence, and so that does just like free up a lot of mental space, but also just like we are not as like physically needed anymore, like as they're turning two. And I know for me, it's just giving me more space to like really pay more attention to my nutrition, to my exercise, to, the things that I enjoy, like reading or like trying to get back into meditation or really prioritizing my own sleep. Like those are things that do tend to really go on the back burner in those first couple of years as you're trying to find your footing. And I feel like the more that I talk to moms too, like most people seem to start feeling more normal and more like themselves at this 2-year mark. And I think it's so fascinating that people just don't really talk about it a lot. Like we hear a lot about like 6 weeks postpartum and like, as we've talked about the whole bounce back culture and all that stuff. Like
Yeah,
no one feels remotely normal at 6 weeks postpartum. But I
I
would say
know.
even like 6 months, like you still might not feel normal. And I know I have a lot of conversations with moms too, like just about physical, recovery and health, where they're like maybe a year postpartum and they're like, I still don't feel like myself. Why is this taking so long? And I honestly think like 2 years is probably like a realistic timeline of like when things start to feel more normal.
Yeah, and I think if you were to think about the different physiological responses that are going on throughout those different time frames, that if we like gave women a better roadmap of this is what's going on in your like in your recovery, and like these are the demands that you're going through during these different time phases, then it would take a lot of pressure off, things, because I don't think people go into it being like, okay, you just like grew a whole human, you grew another organ to help support that human, and then that, human that you were making just siphoned off all of your nutrient stores, right? And you have to replenish them at the same time that you're maybe also trying to still nurture that baby if you're breastfeeding. Like, wow, you have all these different hormonal shifts going on. Like, it just really is a lot. And I don't think anyone should expect to feel like amazing or like they have to bounce back in a 6 week, 6 month, 1 year time period. Um, a lot of the new research that is coming out too is even saying from a nutrient store standpoint that you may not be back to that same level pre-pregnancy nutrient store, like 6 to 8 years after
I've
you've had
seen
your
that.
last pregnancy. So like it really is a long time, it's significant.
Well, and then when you factor in too, like if you are having your last baby, in say your mid 30s, right? And then you're going, 6 to 8 years, that puts you in your 40s. Like, so then you're perimenopausal or menopausal too. And so then you're dealing with all of that. And so it's like there's just
Yeah.
a lot going on. We don't catch a break, really.
No, we don't. But I think if, you know, a lot of the things that we talk about is being like consistent and intentional, not perfect, with your fitness and your nutrition, and you're thinking about it from a truly a place of like nourishing and taking care of yourself. You're going to go into that perimenopausal state in a much better position to navigate that next, cascade of hormonal shifts and physical and psychological changes that happen during that time period.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also a reason why, like, I mean, obviously, like we're saying, like capacity is a big issue, but to not put off, caring for
Yeah,
yourself. Because I've even heard people say, like, oh, I'll just wait till I'm done having babies. Like, I know I want another baby, I'll just wait. But just given how significantly it alters your body, um, not waiting, just doing what you can. Like you said, those small, consistent, like steps
yeah,
will
no,
pay off.
I
But
think, yeah, you know, don't wait until things are gonna feel perfect or like there's never gonna be a right time, right time. Like life is always gonna throw challenges and curveballs, and I think putting off like your health needs is only gonna make things harder down the road. And I work with a variety of age people. They're not always all like in the 25 to 35 range. They maybe are going through perimenopause or menopause, and a lot of them will say that they wish they wouldn't have like pushed things off or like waited till their kids were older to take care of themselves better.
yeah, and I even just think about the fact that like yes, we're 2 years postpartum right now, right? And like we're saying like okay, now we have the capacity to really focus in more on these things, but it doesn't mean that we haven't been doing them. Like we've
Yeah,
still been chugging along. We have not been perfect, and
no,
especially like I think it's such a good thing to point out that like yes, Caitlin and I like this is our job, right? Like I am a fitness trainer, you are a nutritionist, but just because those are our professions does not mean that we are perfect in
no,
these areas. So, sometimes it's one of those things where you're like, I know what I should be doing. However, doing it is not always as easy. And sometimes it is just like, okay, let's just do what we can, do a little bit, because I know that that is still impactful and it all adds up on each other. But so now that we're at 2 years, now we're kind of in a well, not kind of, now we're in a better spot, right? Like now as we're
yeah,
like, okay, we can really hone in on these things. All those little things that we've done up until now put us at a different baseline, I guess, than if
yeah.
we weren't doing anything.
I think that's a really good point. It's like, yeah, we weren't doing absolutely nothing. And like all of a sudden just started at 2 years postpartum. It's just, it's a lot more consistent. And like you mentioned, there's just more capacity to like take better self-care activities and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So how would you say, like, now at 2 years postpartum, do you notice a significant difference from like this time last year, how you were feeling? Just like overall, like physically. I mean, I know you said mentally you were still experiencing the perinatal mood until about 15 months, but like even just reflecting on like this past year, like what would you say has changed and evolved?
Yeah, I think outside of mood, I'm physically also feeling substantially better, especially in the last like 4 to 5 months, probably. I think that I've also mentioned having pretty significant SI joint issues after having Gianna, and I'm finally feeling like in a much better place with that. I think, again, probably a combination of like being able to like improve strength in like my glutes and my core and my pelvic floor have made a big difference. I've also around that time was able to see a massage therapist that has some like specialty in like perinatal and specifically like abdominal therapy care, and that's been really helpful. I did work with like a physical therapist too, like in the past year. So all of those things in combination have been really helpful to do that. So it's not be having like chronic pain every single day has also been super helpful. Um, I do obviously still have pain from time to time, but it's not like debilitating. So that's been huge as well. As
Yeah.
well.
And that then helps your mental state too if you're not in constant pain.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, both like physically and mentally a lot better. I think, as you know, working from home, and especially when you have to have client, facing time, childcare is a really challenging thing. And so around that like 15, 16 month point as well, Gianna started going to daycare. And so again, like had more like open up capacity to be able to sort of separate my work life balance a little bit more. And that is, a huge help as well. But yeah, I think those are probably like big differences in, yeah, my, I guess, like overall, like outlook. And I think it makes me feel really like excited for the year to come, knowing that I have like put in a lot of work in the last 6 months, particularly, um, mentally and physically to be able to, have more more time for my own goals.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the childcare piece for sure is so helpful too. Like you said, just like freeing up that not only, having the time, right, to like being able to focus on yourself too, but even just like helping with the mental load too of things, of like not having to juggle everything at once, or like you said, like being able to kind of have more of that, uh, what am I trying to say? Work-life balance. I mean, everyone talks about the work-life balance and like who truly has it, but I do think that helps um, with things overall, being able to separate the two.
Yeah, and I'd like to be transparent about that too. It's like I am very fortunate to have that piece. Luca's also going to be starting kindergarten in the fall, so I'll have even like a little additional, like more than just 2.5 hours, by myself every day. But it does make a difference, in terms of your level of support and what you can accomplish and do and be consistent with. And when you don't have, those kinds of supports, it can be really difficult and very overwhelming and trying. And so I've been in both positions and understand what those challenges look and feel like.
Yeah, I feel like for me now compared to like last year, I mean, I do think the fact that she is a little more independent now, is huge. Like being able to set her up with some toys, and she can kind of play by herself for like 15 minutes is awesome. For me, I have both kids at home all the time. So I feel like right now my like biggest hurdle is just like they're in that stage where they're just fighting all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, make it end. But no, like overall, I definitely feel, yeah, I don't really know how to describe it, but just feeling like I am in a place where I can like take on more now in terms of my self-care stuff. Like not necessarily in a place where I'm like, oh, like give me more work to do, like not in that kind of like capacity, but just like a capacity to like take care of myself. And like nutrition has been such a big thing for me. Like that is one thing where like if my capacity is low, my nutrition goes out the window. And I feel like that's probably a common experience. I don't think I'm alone in that. Like I'm someone where like I could keep up with my workouts, but nutrition is the
Mm.
thing that falls off. And for me, it's more like I forget to eat. I'm like, I'm doing work, I'm trying to get the kids food, and then I'm like, oh crap, it's 3 o'clock. I haven't had lunch. But Caitlin has actually been great helping me get back on track, and now I just feel like I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, like I have that mental space now where I'm like, I can sit down and really plan out my meals for the week and like come up with recipes. And so like that's feeling really good for me, just being at a point where I'm like, I can really focus on like taking care of my body now, like in all aspects, not just working out, but also the nutrition, trying to prioritize my sleep more, remembering to drink water, like little things that you kind of like take for granted. Um,
Yeah.
and like my son, so he's gonna be 5 this year, but because he has a late birthday, he can't go to kindergarten yet, but he is gonna be going to pre-K, so I think that's gonna be exciting. He's very excited about that. Um, and just, like you were talking about having a couple extra hours in the day. So, I mean, granted, I'll still have the 2-year-old with me and we'll see how that goes. But I do think just seeing that on the horizon of like, oh, I'm gonna have, a couple hours a day where it's just me and the one child. And if you have more than one kid and you're listening to this, you know that just having one kid feels like a vacation. Like,
I was just gonna say the
yeah.
same thing. It's so different when
Which
it's
is
just one of them.
hilarious. Yeah. Because when you just have one kid, you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. I can't do this. But there's something that just like flips when you have subsequent children that you're just like, oh, having one kid, this is a breeze.
I know.
It's almost like I'm by myself.
So funny how that is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think something else that's interesting, like for you and me, is like I feel like a lot of times at the 2-year postpartum mark, this is like when people are starting to prepare to have another baby. But for you and I, we're done having babies. So we're
Yeah.
also in this like weird, I don't know, I guess again, it's kind of bittersweet, right? Of like, okay, we're moving out of the baby stage. Think of them still being babies until they're like 2 years old. But it is very sad, leaving behind the baby stage. But then I also think it's really exciting to not be preparing for another pregnancy. Like we're finally, and like you and I breastfed for a while, like past the 1-year mark. So like
Yeah.
we have more recently kind of like gotten ourselves back, our bodies back to ourselves. And so rather than now being at the stage where we're like, oh, now I've got to prepare for trying to conceive again, now it's like, oh, like we are just, our bodies are for ourselves now moving forward. And also just shifting into that stage of like parenting young children and moving out of the newborn, yeah, baby stage. It's very different, but I think it's also very exciting.
Yeah, I think of it as really exciting. I know it's we have given our bodies in one way or another for like the past 5, 6 years in terms of like the whole trying to conceive process, being pregnant, breastfeeding, and it's a lot. It's very demanding. And so being able to, move forward in a sense of that, like, okay, like I can really just focus on like getting stronger and just like being able to prepare my body to keep up with all of the like activities and fun stuff that they do and try not to like, worry about like, am I gonna like hurt my hurt my hip, trying to like kick a soccer ball in the backyard.
Hmm.
Or like not being like having to say no to giving a piggyback and like, that feels really good and exciting and just also, being able to, like we've talked about, just have that, capacity for self-growth in other areas is really exciting for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. Just like really now, physically the focus shifting away from like preparing bodies for another pregnancy, instead preparing our bodies to like be able to do things with our kids for years to come and just,
Yeah,
yeah, be stronger, be healthy in general, like be able to be like an active participant in parenthood, I
yeah,
think is a really fun goal to work towards. And then even just having the capacity to, in terms of like fitness stuff, like being able to set goals that maybe we haven't been able to work on in quite a while. Like one of my goals right now is I want to be able to do a pull-up. I have never in my life been able to do a pull-up, and I know I'm not alone in that. But like that's one of my goals now, and I'm like I can really work towards that because I'm not gonna have to, be pregnant again and like deal
Yeah.
with all of that. So, um, or like I'm gonna run a 5K this fall. I haven't run a 5K and gosh, I
Hmm.
don't even know how long. I do need to start training for it though, because I haven't run in quite some time. But just being able to do fun things like
Yeah.
that now, I think is also really exciting.
Hmm. I know I would like to be able to at least like partially run a 5K. I don't think that I'm quite there yet as far as being able to start the impact of
Yeah, with your
running.
SI.
Um, but I would like to be, but I know like not quite there yet, but I have started like, adding more like incline into my walks on the treadmill without like it being aggravated. So that's a that's a win. But yes, I think like you said, just like fun to have different like fitness related targets that aren't like requiring of growing a baby is like kind of nice. But yeah, I think as we move forward into year two, we'll have lots of like more, like different topics and exciting things to come, hopefully, for our audience. And I think this is a good place to probably wrap up this conversation. Do you have anything else to share?
No, I think we covered a lot of great things, and we'll be back next summer with our year three reflections.
Yeah.
So we'll see how things have changed. It'll be kind of cool because we can listen back to this episode and be like, where were
I
we a
know.
year ago?
I know. Yeah. No, I don't know. I think this is a nice way for me to like reflect on things and talk it out. And hopefully this reflections are, helpful for other moms who might be in a similar, stage of life. And yeah, if you have liked this episode, please feel free to tune in next week. You can find Meg and I on Instagram. Mega is at Vibrant Mama Wellness, and I am at Wholesome Huntress Nutrition. And please feel free to subscribe on whatever podcast channel you are listening to, and we'll see you soon.